On today's episode of the Gripe Session podcast, we welcome former New York Met pitcher Steve Trachsel. Steve comes on the podcast today, and we have just a great conversation about baseball and just a whole lot of things in general. So, take a listen.
It's Gripe Session time with your host, George Wanaka.
It's about nothing.
Discussing everything from real estate, current events, a little bit of everything, and the annoying little things that just tick you off.
You can't handle the truth.
What? You didn't know?
Here's your host, George Wanaka.
Your ass better call somebody.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's edition of the Gripe Session podcast. And as of after the last couple of weeks, we're doing exactly what we're talking. We're talking baseball again. And today we have former New York Mets pitcher Steve Trachsel. Steve, tell everybody what's up.
Not much. How we doing, Georgie?
We're doing good, my friend. So obviously I saw Steve a couple of weeks ago, just like I did with Howard and a couple of the other guests that we're going to have coming up. So stay tuned to the podcast and you'll get to see who those people are as well. So, Steve and I met down at Mets Fantasy Camp. And, I thought it would be good to have the listeners of the podcast get to hear from Steve and just to tell him a little bit about his career. What it was like pitching for the Mets and, being involved in things like fantasy camp. So we'll start off with Steve. Why don't you give him a little bit of info on your career, how you got started, how you came up, and go from there.
Just kind of got started like a lot of people did, started the Little League route and played in high school. And then kind of at that point decided I think I wanted to give it a shot in college and was lucky enough to get to go play in junior college. Played there for 2 years, Fullerton Junior College out here in Southern California. Ended up getting a scholarship to Long Beach State, which obviously the parents were really happy about. And went to Long Beach State for 1 year in 1991. We got to go to the College World Series. During the College World Series, was drafted by the Chicago Cubs in the 8th round. Not sure why it lasted so long. But, then 14 days later, I was in Arizona extended and working my way up through the minor league system. So
Great.
got the call up 2.5 years later in Chicago. So in 1993. So
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. So what was it what was it like to pitch in New York? We've heard a lot about that some pitchers can make it in New York and some pitchers can, or even players for that matter.
Players for sure. Yeah.
That it's difficult place to play. What did you think about playing in New York, first and foremost? And then second of all, how would you relate to playing in New York?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, so I was in Tampa Bay in 2000. I was a free agent the year before, 1999, after 99 in Chicago. And we were actually having a lot of discussions with the Mets and Steve Phillips. New York was a place I wanted to go just because I wanted to get a taste of, that having to want to, win and need to win every day, because that was just what was expected from that city. Steve Phillips was great. Was one of the few GMs that I've actually worked with in my career that I would actually still to this day probably trust. He was very straightforward with us and what he had to do in order to get me there. Wasn't able to get that, some players he needed to move, wasn't able to make that happen. And so I went to Tampa Bay for a year, got traded to Toronto. Next year, straight into free agency. And Steve Phillips, I think, was the very first phone call immediately. And, same thing, as saying, want you here. I wanted to go there. We ended up talking with the Angels as well, just, because that's basically my hometown. My parents still live 12, 15 minutes away from Angel Stadium, Anaheim Stadium, whatever the heck they're calling it now. Anaheim Stadium of Los Angeles of Southern California, or whatever that garbage is. But so chose to go to New York and was still overwhelmed. Felt like I was ready to get there. Felt like I knew what it was going to be like, and I still wasn't even close. New York is just another level of intensity from whether it be the fans, the media, the expectations. The expectations was probably the part I was most prepared for. Wasn't prepared for not meeting my own expectations after the first couple of weeks, and it's a tough place to play when you're struggling, but it's a fantastic place to play when things are going well, and some of the most knowledgeable fans in the game.
Great. Yeah, that's what a lot of people have talked about with New York fans, whether it be Mets fans, which obviously are passionate, as well as Yankee fans, even though we don't talk about Yankee fans on the podcast. But, they talk about not only are they the most knowledgeable fans in the world, but, that they care that much about their teams.
Right.
If you're good, they're going to love you. And if you're bad, they're going to let you know, that they expect more out of you. So, at least as the expression goes, you pretty much know exactly what you're going to get when you walk out that tunnel.
Right.
So, for some people, they're like, well, that's exactly what you want. You want to know what you're going to walk out of and not have that, misdirection saying, oh, wait, well, what's going on here? I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the thing I was looking forward to was that expectation from an organization as well.
Yeah.
That they have to try to put together the best team every year. And, I loved Chicago, still love going to Chicago, but, at the time the Tribune Company owned that team, and, the stadium was full, whether we were in last place or, we weren't ever in first place, but they just kind of looked at us like, why should we go and spend $3 million on a player at the trade deadline when we're sold out every single day, no matter what we do, and that just doesn't float in New York City.
So actually, you know what, Steve, talk about that for a second, right? From this aspects of it being a player, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, you're playing the game that we all, as I like to say in fantasy camp, us hacks, because even some of the better players, we're the best hacks that are there, or, those better players, we never made it to your position, right? Mm-hmm. So what's it like to be one of the best players in the entire world, have people still coming to see you, but in the same breath, not being able to compete at the level that you want to compete because they either don't want to spend the money or don't have the resources? Talk about that for a minute, because I don't think a lot of people actually have that conversation.
Right. I mean, it's a real fine line, between a last place team and a first place team in each division. And it, in the long run of 162 games, you literally can break it down into, a dozen plays throughout the year or half a dozen games. And you can see it after a couple of years. You've been there and you can see what it's like, what other teams do or what they have, or parts that you just like. One little part could be a setup guy in the bullpen, or it could just be a utility infielder. It could be something real simple like that. And you think, God, if we just had this one little extra peg in our machine, that would put us over the top and put us into like contenders in the playoffs or whatever. And then to not have something like that happen, multiple years, unfortunately, it's like, God, it's so frustrating. It's like you get to the point where you're like, does the ownership actually want to win, or are they more worried about just filling the seats? Obviously you fill the seats, you win, you're going to fill the seats, except for when I was in Tampa, that didn't work. But it's frustrating because, the ultimate goal once you get there is you want to make the playoffs and have success every year and give yourself an opportunity to win a World Series. And, you see the trade deadline come, and, you would see all these other teams do little things, and we didn't ever really do anything in Chicago. It's like, okay, well, how much better can we make ourselves over the last 2 months to boost us when everyone else made themselves better by adding a piece here or there? And it can be frustrating as a player, because there's only so much you can do and hopefully you've done that before the trade deadline to get yourself in a position to possibly get better. And if it doesn't happen, then it can be pretty frustrating.
Do you have, I guess the mindset in a situation like that to, as we like to refer to it as press, where you're trying to do too much with certain things. You're trying to throw a ball harder than you've ever thrown before, or you're trying, or on a hitting side, trying to hit a ball 500 feet, even though you only get one run out of stuff like that. does that come into the pro mentality as well? Because I know in other instances, in whether it be little league or travel ball or stuff, where I've watched kids do this,
Mhm.
and I've done it myself down the, in the past as well, where I've pressed because I'm like, well, I have to do more because I've got to try to make up for what we don't have.
Yeah, it's not necessarily even trying to make up for what may or may be missing at the team, but that's something, yeah, you're always trying to battle with. From a pitcher, I mean, you still see it all the time. You'll throw a nasty breaking ball on the outside corner, and the guy has zero chance of making contact with it. It was what we would call, like, a perfect pitch. It's what you work on in the bullpen all the time, and you execute it, and you're like, oh, that's perfect. So what's the first thing goes to your head? I'm going to do it even better than that. And it's like, and then what happens? He ends up being, a spinner right down the middle, and the guy hits it in the gap for a double. And you're just like, damn, I just threw a perfect one. It's like, well, no, your mindset should have been just repeat what you just did. Don't make that even better, because what you already did was above and beyond what needed to be done. And you can't do that over a course of a game, let alone, a month, if you're trying to make up for it. And you see hitters do that too, that, the press. There's a million reasons you can try to press. If you're struggling, you're trying to do better to get yourself out of a funk, make better pitches, win games, get out of a slump, whatever. And sometimes the more you press, the worse you get. And it takes a lot of experience and confidence to say, you know what, I need to do less to get myself to be better. And coming up in Chicago, Greg Maddux was there before me. His mantra that they always threw down into us at the minor leagues was, runners in the scoring position, games on the line. You're better off taking something off of a pitch and making sure it's in a good location than trying to throw it, like you said, 100 miles an hour when you're usually only at 93 or whatever. Because the harder you try to throw it, usually the straighter it is. And you miss your spots, and when you miss your spots, that's when hitters kill you. You hit your spot with a 70 mile an hour fastball, you're going to have a lot more success than you are down the middle at 100.
Yeah. That's great.
It's tough. It takes a lot of experience and a lot of, mental, and, those are the things that you always talk about down the bullpen or in the dugout during the games.
Okay. What would you say is the state of today's game? I know we have potentially a lockout that's looming, either today or tomorrow, I believe, one of the two. I think it might be tomorrow. By the time this podcast hits, it'll be obviously last week. But what's your opinion? I'm always of the same opinion, is that I believe that there's always a happy medium in between both sides. And, some people have always blame the players, but they don't realize that the players' careers, when they're all engaged in baseball, that's
right.
Literally everything that they do, and it's their health and their livelihood. So what would you, and on the other side, we also get it from the owner's perspective, is this is a business, we're in it to make money. So I'm always the guy that says, there's definitely a happy medium in between the two. What's your opinion on that?
It's actually pretty simple. I was either player rep or assistant player rep for basically 14 years of my career. Okay. So going back, call it 100 years, the players, give or take a percentage one way or the other, have always received 52% of all revenues. It's a straight graph. You can graph it out, and it's just a straight line going up. Revenues go up, players get 52%. It's always been that way, even when players were making $60,000 a year. So, obviously, you look at salaries now. Like Max Scherzer just signed. His 1 year salary is going to be more than I made in 17 years. And as the old guy, I'm supposed to get upset with that, because when I was making $4 million a year, there were guys upstairs in the TV booth and front office going, "Oh my God, he's going to make more than I made in my 15 years prior to this guy." It's just how it works.
Yep.
Should be simple. Open up the books, which owners have never ever done, and it's so we know what the numbers are. To say, hey, keep it 52%. But you're talking billions and billions of dollars. If the owners are able to get that down to 49%, you're talking a few extra $100 million on their side. I mean, the numbers are ginormous. So, as far as a lockout, nothing really matters until April 1st or strike or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The agreement ends on December 1st, but there's no lockout, no strike. And, it's fine. So actually, I got home from camp and that was one of the first things my dad mentioned to me is, oh, what do you think about the lockout? I'm like, what lockout? Oh, no, I mean the strike. I'm like, what strike? He's like, oh, I was watching MLB channel and they're saying all this stuff. I was like, Dad, which channel was it you were watching? MLB channel. Who owns MLB channel? The owners do. Of course, they're not going to be talking anything good about the players on that channel.
Sure.
And it was that way when the Cubs were owned by the Tribune Company. So they had Superstation, they had newspapers. The Braves had theirs. The New York, all those TV stations are all owned by ownership. So it's always hard for the players to get their point of view out there because what newspaper or TV channel is going to put it on there because they're owned by same people that own the teams. So,
well, I think nowadays more than ever, I think that if the players started to, past and present, which is why I'm glad you're doing the podcast, there is other ways of getting messages out there, right? Between social media, between this type of media, and between, like, I know Figgy has the Amazing but True podcast with Jake Brown for New York Post. Shout out to them. Give them a little shout out there.
Yeah.
But I think that with the advent of technology, there is that way for the players, if they use this technology in the right way, to get that message out there to combat all of that other, because not just the press when it comes to baseball, but look, when you start talking about politics and how news people are not objective in the ways that they have been in the past, that everything is coming with a slant. And we're not going to talk politics today, but because that will be on a different tangent. But there's ways to get our message out there, whether it be politically, whether it be business wise, whether it be even baseball wise. So I think that is something that hopefully down the road, the players can look to do to try to bring some equalness to the conversation. So
it'll be different. I don't think. I don't know much about Twitter. I definitely have 20 followers. I don't know anybody that's got 25 million of them. It's much easier for how many subscribers are watching MLB channel. They probably got a couple million people where you put all those social media for everyone together. It's less than half of that. So they're still going to win that war of getting their message out there. It's also been a long time before they've seen, if players could stick together, if something were to happen. And, so maybe they're going to see if that still goes. I remember, it was my rookie year, we had that lockout. We were at the table literally 5 minutes away of having everything done. And somewhere a report came from a big name player saying that he was ready to cross a line. Meeting ended right there. Instantaneously. And next thing you know, it went on another 3 weeks. And, turns out that player may or may not have said that. He denied it, but the report came out. So the owner said, oh, see, they're getting ready to break. This guy's one of the biggest names in the game, and he's ready to cross the line now. So any type of that stuff, too, can just throw off the entire thing. No one ever gets to hear about it. And it just makes everything go longer and longer.
Sure.
So hopefully it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
We'll see.
What's your opinion on a lot of these rule changes from everywhere from the shift to, the relief pitchers coming in for more than, for multiple batters nowadays, as opposed to specialists and I had to say it to the clock of, I don't know why I would ask you that, but that's okay. So, I think we needed to put a clock on squirrel this year, but that's a whole different conversation for another day. But what's your opinion on some of these new, things that MLB is coming out with?
Yeah, some of the stuff I guess they're doing in independent leagues, that just, I don't even know where you can even make that up. You must be on some serious drugs. No pickoffs. Like after your third pickoff, if you pick off, it's I don't even know where that stuff comes in. I don't mind the shift. I just can't wrap my head around why the hitters don't hit against the shift all day long. Because you watch them in batting practice, and I watched them do it for, you mean a guy like Wade Boggs or Tony Gwynn looking at a shift like going, oh my God, I'm going to hit 900 this year. It should be really pretty routine, but the way the stats are now, obviously home runs mean more than anything. Wins for pitchers, starting pitchers, don't really mean anything anymore. I don't understand that. Can't imagine going to arbitration and saying, hey, I was 8-4 this year with a 4.5 ERA and 150 innings. I had a great year. My first thought was like, well, what happened? You missed 6 weeks. You must have got hurt. What happened? And they're like, no, I pitched every game. So big fan of, in my opinion, getting rid of the DH altogether. That's not going to happen. I think that's one that will go through. There'll be universal DH forever.
I don't like that, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, even back in my day, as we always say, the union was always for that. I think at one point, because you get the DH is going to be paid way more than the extra utility guy. So they looked at it as a way to increase salaries, which, it would do. But bringing in a pitcher and face 3 hitters, all these things that are supposed to be speeding up the game have all had the opposite effect. And, I don't mind that when I feel bad for the specialist guys that, lefty specialists there was 75 of them released that next day. So a lot of guys lost their job because of that rule change. There's always consequences to them, but I don't think they're making the game better. I think they're making it worse. I've heard more people in the past year and a half say how difficult it is to watch a game and how they're basically tuning out. So if they're going to do something in the bargaining agreement, they need to address that more than just about anything else, I think.
But do you think time is really like a factor in today's game? To me, again, I'm a fan of pitchers. I'm a fan of the mental game that goes on between a pitcher and a hitter, whether it's the pitcher taking their time, but putting a clock that says you have to throw this within a certain amount of time. To me, that's just, okay, yes, we understand they want offense 100%, which to me is why, home runs, they get paid. But if people just started going hitting the ball the other way and say, okay, I'll take the single as opposed to the 4-run home run, the 3-run home run. But I'm like, well, if you got 3 guys or 4 guys on that side of the field, it's not basing out a break. They're not hitting a home run. They're taking away a hit. So go the hit the other way.
Yeah.
That's why I've heard both sides of that argument with the shift. And I'm like, okay, they're trying to take the home run away. I go, well, then last I checked, the infield was not past the outfield wall.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
And a lot of the dynamics of the swing too, is if you're trying to lift the ball out of the ballpark, if you're off by just a little bit, you see more pop-ups and you see a lot more ground balls. If you're trying to pull balls that shouldn't be pulling, but I think it should be easier for these guys to put 3 or 4 singles the other way together to score 2 runs than versus maybe hitting a solo homer.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those things where, when I had talked to Hojo on the last podcast, and I talked about, and obviously Hojo was a switch hitter, and talked about the shift, and if he back in his prime knew he had a deficiency in a part of his game, he would go work on that deficiency. Now, if it's going the other way, okay, but nowadays people say, well, these are major league hitters, they can't go the other way. I don't believe that they can't go the other way. I would just believe that they're not training themselves to go the other way to take those 2 runs. They want to hit the 3-run home run and go from there. So
is it selfishness? Is it more about, I want to get my stats and make my numbers, the back of my baseball card look a little bit better? It doesn't look good when it says you hit 220, no matter what, in my, but that's me. But back to the clock, this game's never had a clock on it before, ever, in 149 years or whatever it's been. So granted, like I said, games are getting longer. And I think people's attention spans nowadays are way shorter. You see other sports like golf, they're struggling because nobody wants to go and do something for 4.5 hours.
Nobody wants to play behind somebody for 4.5 hours. They wait on every shot. I was going to attest to that. I can definitely attest to that. I don't want to wait for
I kind of call it my microwave burrito theory. I'm old enough to remember when microwaves came out. It took like 7 minutes to make a burrito, and that was great. And then it was down to 3 minutes. Now you're screaming at your microwave because your burrito's not done in 90 seconds. Now it's got to be done in like 25 seconds. So, just as things go on, things got to always have to be quicker.
Yeah. Definitely, especially with technology nowadays. It's technology is, as I like to tell people, it's a blessing and a curse. It's allowed me to sit here and do a podcast here with you and show this on YouTube later on. But it's a curse because it's all encompassing. Like now we all see our kids like this. And it's like, go outside and play, go do something. And it's like,
in a clubhouse, in a major league clubhouse.
Yeah.
You go in there and they have plugs in each locker to plug in your electronics and your earphones, and guys sit there on their phone and they're listening to their music. There's no interaction.
Wait, I didn't see that. I didn't see that in our locker. We had plugs in our locker room for my phone because my phone kept dying in there. Not my locker room.
On the other side, they do.
On the other side, okay, in the Major League clubhouse locker room. Oh, yeah. Okay. I saw how that was.
We used to sit around after the game for 2-3 hours after a ball game and just talk about baseball and have a couple beers with the guys. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Guys game's over, boop, shower, gone.
Yeah.
So
changing of the times, unfortunately, as we like to say. But what would you say was probably one of your biggest career highlights for you personally, whether it be, personal accomplishment, team accomplishment, etc.?
That one game playoff I pitched in Chicago, it's got to be up there against the Giants to get the Cubs in the playoffs. All-Star game in '96 was great. The division clincher in '06 was huge. Small little things like getting to 2,500 innings. In the big leagues. When I was in Baltimore. Those are all some pretty special things. I think pretty happy with. Rookie pitch of the year, that was great. And unexpected at the time. So. Obviously never got the ring, which is, the ultimate goal, unfortunately. But, over the course of all those years, I was able to do some pretty nice things.
That's great. Yeah, everybody always says I got the, I didn't get the ring, but I got to play, professional baseball, which a lot of people unfortunately don't get
with a lot of great guys. I got to play with a lot of guys that are in the Hall of Fame now, which is really, really, really cool.
That's cool.
And, you sit down and think about it, the list would probably be pretty impressive. And I don't even do that enough as I probably should. One thing I just kind of regret is I didn't get more signed memorabilia from guys I played with.
Oh, I do that now. People are like, oh, I don't, you go to camp and you get some ball sign and stuff like that. I'm like, I just go look and go, okay, who don't I have? Because these, the experiences that we've had at camp with people like yourself and Tank and Doc and Hojo now, it's just been tremendous. And Paul, I could go through the whole list of from the newer coaches or younger coaches up until your Buzz Capras and your Duffy Dyers and your Bobby Wines and those guys and Ron Swoboda. I can keep going with Felix and everybody, but it's one of those things as a baseball fan growing up, you sit back and you go, wow, this is just phenomenal. So good experiences. But what kind of advice would you give? Because I get a lot of kids that I've coached in the past and even to this day that listen to the podcast and will watch the videos and things of that nature. What kind of advice would you give to kids that obviously dream the dream that we've all dreamt at one point about playing Major League Baseball? What kind of advice would you give to those kids?
I'd probably start with the simplest one is don't relegate yourself just to baseball. It's the Major League professional players don't play 12 months a year for a reason, and 10 and 11-year-olds shouldn't be doing that either. You should be playing soccer, you should be playing football, basketball, whatever other sports you want to make yourself a fully well-rounded athlete. I see that here a lot now. You go become a pitcher only, in 12, 13-year-old travel ball that's all over the place. I didn't stop hitting or playing in the infield until I got to college. I was still not happy about it then, because I still felt like, I could hit cleanup or whatever, sixth in the lineup. So, and just give yourself those months off to let your arm or body rest and work on a different sport. Make sure you're having fun. If it gets to the point where it's a grind, these travel ball teams are constant. I can't imagine, like here in California, going to Texas every other weekend to play in these showcase tournaments, and they're just ridiculous. It's way too tough on the parents, way more money than you should be spending. If you're good, they're going to find you. It's that simple. If you're good enough to play in college, the college people are going to find you. The professional scouts are going to find you if you're good enough to do it. You don't have to go and drop, $1,000 on a showcase. Put that money into your college fund, just in case you don't get a full scholarship or you want to go somewhere and try and walk on. That's the biggest crime I see going on in youth sports. But that and the overuse. But foremost, have fun. Make sure it's what you want to do, because the simple math of it, it's nearly impossible. Just to make it in college now is a pretty special thing. To get drafted is even more special, and to become a major league player. I mean, there's only, it's been 150 years. There's only been 18,000, 19,000 major league players ever in the history of the game. It's really difficult, and if you want to give yourself an honest chance, you got to give yourself at a young age. Otherwise, you're going to peak out and blow out early, and or burnout. Most likely, I see more burnout now than I do see anything else.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely great advice. I had Turk on the podcast a while back, and one of the things Turk said is, you see so many people now, even now in the minors and in college and getting drafted, that are coming in with injuries. And he goes, where do you think those injuries came from? Because all they've done is played one sport. Their body didn't have a chance to heal, and they just kept pitching, or they kept throwing, and they kept doing, and there was no downtime to rest, to relax, or to learn a different body part or use a different body part than the one that they were constantly using, and kind of go from there.
I coached a little bit when my son was playing years ago, and I just remember we'd go over to the side and have some kids come over and work on a bullpen, and a new kid would show up and hey, how's it going? He throws strikes. He's, oh yeah, I throw strikes. I'm like, oh, what do you throw? Fastball. He's, oh, I got a fastball, a curveball, a slider, a changeup, a knuckleball, a cutter. I'm just like, what? I'm like, you're 13. It's like, throw me a fastball strike. Can't. Try again. It's like, why are you messing around with all of these other things, and you can't even throw a routine fastball over the plate? And you hear me say this all the time at fantasy camps. It's like, don't tell me you can pitch and come up there and walk 9 guys in a row. It's like, it's so weird. I was so good 35 years ago.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, haven't done anything.
Throw a fastball for a strike or where you want. None of those other pitches matter.
Oh, they make a difference. My son is funny. My son is well, he's 15 now, and he's a lefty. And for the longest time, up until maybe last year into this year, it was the first time. Anytime somebody said, I'm going to teach you on his travel team, well, I'm going to teach you how to throw a curveball, he'd literally go like this and look right at me. And he goes, my dad won't let me throw a curveball. And they're like, why would you let him throw a curveball? I go, because he doesn't need to throw a curveball. I'm like, he throws a 2-seam and a 4-seam fastball, and they both move.
Yeah.
That's it. And they'll throw a changeup. It doesn't put any taxing stuff on the arm, and the ball, because he's a lefty, moves on its own.
Right.
Why does he need to throw a curveball right now? Let him learn the curveball when he's fully developed. His arm is there, and go from there. And he literally would tell me, I'm not allowed. My dad will literally walk onto the field and pull me off the field if he sees the curveball.
I love it.
So, yeah. But
I've had interactions with that. I've had interactions with parents, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
They come, they ask you for an honest opinion, and I have to double check with them. I say, do you want an honest opinion, or do you want me to blow smoke up your ass?
Exactly right.
Like, oh, what do you think of my kid? I'm like, yeah, he's good. And he's like, well, is he going to play? I'm like, yeah, he'll probably play in high school. And then they get all bent out of shape. It's like, well, what do you mean just high school? I'm like, well, he's 4'2". You're 5'3". Your wife's 5'1".
Chances are he's not developing to 6'3".
There's only one Altuve and one Pedroia, and they're 1 in a billion. The chances of your son being that next guy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, listen, I've seen that a lot, and the worst is even in youth sports nowadays, when you see some of these parents and coaches going at umpires, and I'm like, this is like Little League. What are you teaching the kids for? You got to teach them at some point that the ball doesn't roll your way. That's bad calls are part of the game. Judgment
All you
calls
got
are
to do is
part of
watch
the
a
game.
major league game and see how bad umpires are at that level.
Yeah, well,
Just
listen, I've seen
imagine
him.
what they're
I've
like.
seen him. Listen, we had one at fantasy camp this year who didn't know rules of have to slide or give yourself up, and it's like, wait, you're the umpire. How do you not know the rule?
Right.
I'm Polish, but that doesn't make sense to me. So, like, what are we talking about here? But anyways, so we've been talking for a couple of minutes, and again, we appreciate having you on the podcast, Steve. I always try to throw some rapid fire questions kind of at you, and just throw them out there for you. So the first one was going to be, which we started having a conversation for, DH or no DH?
I am no DH, but I think I'm going to get out ruled on that one.
Listen. I like the no DH myself because to me there's more strategy involved in anything.
I took a lot of pride in being able to try to handle the bat, at the very least bunt. I can't imagine a more embarrassing thing to happen on a ball field than being pinch hit for as a pitcher because you can't get a bunt down. I was like, that will never happen to me. I will spend hours bunting.
And with pitchers, it also comes down to from everything that I've been told in the past, it comes down to a matter of pride between the pitchers is who's the best hitting pitcher on the team.
Used to be, yep.
Yeah. So that's okay. So that's good. Shift or no shift?
I'm fine with a shift.
Okay.
Just hitter, like I said, hitters just should be able to overcome that easily. Shouldn't be that hard. Bunting works on that too.
That's true too.
Yeah.
New York or LA?
Oh, New York.
I was gonna say you're gonna have a major problem. You don't come out with LA.
That's not even close.
With beach or lake?
Oh, beach.
Beach. Okay.
And there's a difference. There's a difference because my wife's from Jersey. So you guys have the shore. That's even different than the beach also.
Well,
so,
that's true. Okay.
I do like the shore. Jersey Shore reminds me of Newport Beach like 25 years ago.
Okay.
Kind of cool.
So those are rapid fire. So tell everybody what you're doing nowadays. Now that you're retired from baseball,
Yep.
You're obviously a coach at fantasy camp is one of the other things you're doing. Let everybody know what you're doing nowadays.
Just raising kids. I've got a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old, 2 little girls, brand new. I got a son in college, got a daughter in Pace University. So she's a freshman. Yeah. So
over here in New York?
Right there downtown. Yeah.
Okay.
By
my dad went to Pace University.
Oh, no kidding. Great. Well, hopefully he says it's a great school because that's what I was nervous about.
Cool.
But yeah, just trying to keep myself busy with the kids, just do some small business investing stuff.
Okay.
Try to get out and play golf a couple times a month if I can. Was really looking forward to travel until the past 2 years.
Okay.
There's a lot of places I've not been, in the planet that I'd love to go see.
Okay.
Yeah, just taking care of the family and that type of normal stuff.
Okay. Terrific. Well,
nothing too crazy.
Well, listen, crazy sometimes is good and some crazy sometimes is fun as well at the same time. So
yeah, we had some crazy flights on the way home from Thanksgiving, that's for sure.
Did you really? I was so thankful. My trip for Thanksgiving basically came down to a combined 8 blocks. I went 3 blocks that way and 5 blocks that way. And so I was perfect. So, but anyway, Steve, we appreciate having you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, George. It was fun.
Yep. As always, hopefully we'll get you back on down the road and talk a little bit about the Mets. Actually, the one thing we really didn't talk about was this brand new signing that we had with Mr. Scherzer. How do you think that, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, a former pitcher of the Mets, how do you think that relays for us in this coming year? Obviously, if DeGrom comes back healthy, we got an awesome 1-2 punch on paper, because you always got to say on paper, because on paper, a lot of teams are really good and then they got to go play.
Right.
So what's your opinion on that?
37 years old, 3 years I like. I like it better if he was 34 for 3 years. So I think, like you said, if he stays healthy, that's going to be awesome, especially if DeGrom comes back. I'm not sure what's going on with Stroman at this point. So if they can bring him back, that would be a solid 1, 2, 3. Not too familiar with the other two guys, the middle infielder guys that they brought up or just re-signed. But they're going in the right direction. I think Polar Bear's got to have a bounce back year. I'm going to call that the sophomore slump or not, but if he has a bounce back year, kind of like he did the last 6-8 weeks, if he does that, like everyone expected, maybe he's pressing, gets to that point. I think they're in good shape, but health has always been the issue. If guys stay healthy, they're going to have a great team.
Yeah. Listen, when you say sophomore slump, I start going like this. I start twitching from last year. So I don't want to hear sophomore slump, but now that I heard it, and it's like
it's over
about Pete Alonso, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be in good company.
Yeah.
But,
see, sophomore slump's over now. See, now you.
So that being said, yeah, I mean, I think they've got a great 1-2 combination right now. Now, I think, as you said, I think what happens with Stroman. There's been some media reports that he's been circulating on his own, but that we don't know what that means. But at the end of the day, I think that we've got to, we always thought we had more, like even last year, we thought we had 6 or 7 people to potentially be in the starting rotation, or if somebody got injured, we could plug this guy in and it will be okay. Yeah. And then the season came and we were like, what the heck just happened? Who's going down?
Carrasco, he was hurt out of nowhere. So
Carrasco, he took extended time to come back. Obviously, DeGrom got injured, which I was coincidentally at that game, which was unbelievable. He got hurt and was mowing people down.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I missing here?
He's an unbelievable special talent. I think anyone that gets an opportunity to watch him pitch has got to go do it. Because 20 years from now, they're going to be like, I got to see this guy pitch live. So
100%. It's like when Doc was pitching as well.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
And Walker was a really great surprise for us last year, as far as I was concerned. But I think we need to make sure we've got more people well in the background, because as we all know, injuries just all of a sudden come up, and then whoever deals with the injury is the best. I mean, look at the Braves. Braves won the World Series without their best player.
Yeah.
So, it's, and now it looks like Cohen is going to go out there, get the money to spend. So
that's the one thing the Mets fans I've been following on Facebook and all this, so they have no problem spending his money.
That's it. Oh, let's go get this guy. I go, guys, we're not the Yankees.
Let's give them all $500 million a piece. He's got plenty.
No problem. Get rid of him now. We gave him X amount of dollars. Oh, we got to get somebody to take him. No, what? What's the problem here? But anyway, listen, Steve, we appreciate having you on. Like I said, we'll definitely try to get you back again down the road. Maybe talk about what's going on during the season. Hopefully we don't have this lockout that they've been talking about.
Fingers crossed.
But again, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you having you down at Fantasy Camp and taking the time to do the podcast today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, man, George.
Thanks,
have a great Christmas and New Year's. If you don't talk to you before then.
You too, pal.
All right, pal.
Thanks.
Talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the Gripe Session. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.